안녕하세요. 저는 캐리예요. 반갑습니다. Tengo un reto para ti. Did you know what languages I was speaking? Could you understand me without needing the subtitles? Did you know monolingual English speakers can only communicate with 19% of the entire world's population? There are 7.9 billion people in this world, and we can't even communicate with half of them. I started teaching myself Korean, the first language I was using, over quarantine, actually. I've had a lot of fun with it so far, and I've really enjoyed it. I've also been learning Spanish since I was in elementary school. That was the second language I used. I've been learning ASL since I was in 9th grade. ASL is the American Sign Language, the language that the deaf community uses. I'm sure you can find a language out of the roughly 6,500 different languages that are spoken in the world today that you would enjoy learning. So stick with me and I'll tell you why it's important. 70 to 80% of your waking hours as a human being are spent communicating in some way, shape, or form. Whether you're talking to your best friend about that new show and the new episode that just released, or you're sending an email to your professor about a question on an assignment, you're communicating. What if you couldn't ask your professor that question or tell your friend about that new character that was introduced in the latest episode? What would you think you would do? Did you know that 12% of Forsyth County's population doesn't speak English as their first language? That may not seem like a lot to you, but imagine you were in that 12%. What would you do if you spoke a language but you didn't know English well enough to have a conversation with an English speaker, and they didn't know your language well enough to have a conversation with you? We use communication for everything. You may not think about it much, but we communicate all the time. We value communication so much in this society. We as a society use communication to accomplish the smallest of tasks. When there's no communication, there can be little that's done. The Tower of Babel in the Bible is a great example of this. They couldn't get anything done because nobody knew what anyone was saying. We go relationships through communication. You don't just call your best friend, hey you, and that's all you say to them for the entire day. You have a conversation. You grow that relationship through your words and through your communication with them. We want information. We get that through communication with each other. The deaf community relies heavily on communication with each other. They love information. If you ever have a conversation with a deaf person, they will ask you everything about you. That's how they get all of their information. They can't hear anything outside of what they talk about in their groups. They get all of their information from each other. Being a minority in a majority culture can be isolating. Foreigners who come to America are alone. Most of them don't know a lot of English and they struggle to make connections with people. Have you heard of Spanish-speaking family in the grocery store and ever thought about it for a second? Like, do they know English? Can they talk to somebody and have a real conversation with them out in the open and not with amongst their family members or other people who can speak their language? A lot of Hispanic adults don't know a lot of English. I went on a missions trip a few years ago to downtown Winston-Salem to an apartment complex where a lot of Hispanic people lived. None of the adults there knew fluent English, and only a few of them knew English at all. Without effective communication, what seems like simple tasks for us can be much harder for other people. Going to the doctor, shopping, it all becomes so much harder due to language barriers. I was in Walmart one day and I saw a family struggling to communicate with a cashier. They were Hispanic, they didn't know any English, and they were trying to tell the cashier that their ticket was wrong. There was something wrong on their receipt, and they couldn't fix it because they didn't know each other's language. Learning a language can grow your communication to a wider variety of people and culture groups. Imagine being able to be that person to help the deaf woman order herself a Big Mac from McDonald's. You would have the ability to make a complicated situation a world of much easier for not only the cashier working with the deaf lady, but the deaf lady herself. Not only will you feel good for being able to help, but you might be able to actually sit down and have a conversation with that lady, and you grow a relationship with someone that you would never have had that connection with before. Learning another language also has mental applications too. Being multilingual or just bilingual is a really cool skill to have, and you can brag to your friends about it and show off. But did you know that it also helps with your memory? Knowing another language helps you recollect things as you age. Your memory stays intact longer when you know more things. Learning a language is one way to help with that. One of the best parts about learning a new language is being able to experience the new cultures that come with it. Learning about other cultures can actually help you improve your language learning too. For example, Asian cultures are very heavily honor-based. They are crazy about respect. Knowing that, it makes it easier to know why that there are two different ways of speaking in Korean. There's the formal way that you do with people older than you or people you don't know very well, and then the casual way that you would talk to your friends and your younger siblings and people like that. Okay, here's the fun part. Picking your language. Well, what are you already interested in? Do you like anime? Try learning Japanese. Do you like those Spanish dramas on TV? Learn Spanish. Do you know someone like around you that you know personally who speaks another language? Why don't you try giving that one a try? Learn from them. Another way to pick your language is, well, what kind of learner are you? From my experience, I've found that some languages are easier to learn depending on how you learn quickly. For me, I'm a visual and hands-on learner. I learn better with things that I can see and things that I can do to learn. I don't do good with memorizing or auditory cues, so I focus on languages that are easier for me to visualize. Another question you might ask is, how is this language going to be useful to me? And pick one that's going to be useful. Maybe it's a language that you might use for work later, or for school, or just for fun. Pick a language from somewhere around you, or somewhere where you want to go. It'll be a load easier if you know a language and then you can use it with people around you. So there are 3 ways you can start learning a language. The first way, and the most quick and easy way, is to find a teacher. I have an ASL teacher. Her name is Denise Oviat. She has been an interpreter for many years to the deaf community. She's my sign language teacher at school. If you don't have someone in person to teach you, then YouTube is a good second option. I've been learning Korean from a lot of YouTube channels such as Korean Uni and my favorite, Go Billy Korean. He's very good. The second way you can start learning a language is to find some apps and download them onto your phone. This is a great option to start learning a language. And there are 2 apps that I recommend personally that I use frequently. One is Duolingo and the other is Drops. They're both really great apps for learning a language, and they have so many different languages that you can pick and learn. The third way of learning, and probably one of the most fun ways, is immersion into the language. Surrounding yourself with the language. Learning it will make it go quicker and faster because you're just being surrounded by it. It's honestly a lot of fun. When I practice Korean, I like to watch K-dramas, which are, Korean shows, and listen to Korean music or read books written by Korean people in Korean, anything like that. Once you get good enough with your language for basic communication, a lot of fun things can happen. One time I was on the internet and I came across this Spanish speaker who wanted to have a conversation, and I had some time, so I started chatting with them. And they wanted someone to talk to, so I did my best to speak their language. I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I know enough to have a conversation with them. Now, honestly, it didn't go great, and honestly, I made a lot of mistakes, but it was a fun experience that I wouldn't have had if I didn't know any Spanish whatsoever. Another time, I was at a restaurant. I was at Cagney's eating, and I came across these two deaf men who had come in to eat. And they were getting up and leaving, and I decided to say hi and tell them I was learning their language. I was still really, really fresh off the printing press learner for ASL, and I frankly was very, very stiff and bad at trying to tell them what I was doing and that I was excited to learn their language. But they were so excited that I was learning their language, and they were happy and excited for me, and that made me feel really good. So, learning a new language is fun to entertain yourself and give yourself a new challenge, as well as enhancing your communication opportunities and possible situations that can come from knowing another language. So, go find yourself a language to learn, start learning, and have fun. And hey, if you start learning one of the languages I know, we can talk to each other and help each other grow in our language. Well, as they say in Korea, fighting!